Delayed Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC. Across the United States, an unlikely alliance has formed. Governors from both Republican-led red states and Democratic-led blue states, often fierce rivals, have joined forces in a historic lawsuit against the federal government. Their demand: release billions in withheld WIC funds, money meant to feed pregnant women, infants, and young children. Washington claims it paused disbursement to conduct fiscal integrity reviews after reports of vendor mismanagement and unverified reimbursements. But to the states, that explanation rings hollow. Clinics are closing, grocery shelves once labeled WIC approved now sit empty, and families are being told to check back next month. Welcome to African Stories by Asada, the Cynic Driver's YouTube channel. Where are you watching from? Before we dive into the delayed Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, Fund Crisis, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below if you are affected one way or the other by the delay. Let us know where you are watching from. Like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up. It's a rare moment of unity born not from politics but necessity. Because hunger, unlike ideology, doesn't wait. And somewhere in Atlanta, a cynical rideshare driver named Alex finds himself giving two women a lift, one who depends on WIC and another who doubts its worth, while America's fight over compassion and accountability unfolds on the evening news. The late afternoon rain had rinsed Atlanta clean when Alex pulled his white minivan to the curb outside the station. The air smelled of wet pavement and barbecue smoke from a nearby stand. Agnes climbed in first, her worn tote bag clutched tight. Diana followed, confident and brisk, taking the back seat like she owned it. Alex glanced at the mirror. 2 passengers, 2 worlds, 1 ride. The destination was across town, but the conversation that followed would travel much farther. On the radio, a newscaster announced that both Democratic and Republican states had filed a joint lawsuit against the federal government, demanding the immediate release of delayed WIC funds. Alex turned down the volume, but the headline hung in the air like humidity. That, he said quietly, is a first in a long time, red and blue finally agreeing on something. Agnes sighed, voice trembling. I heard about that lawsuit. My WIC benefits are ending next month. I don't know what we'll do if the payments stop completely. She rubbed her thumb along the strap of her bag. They said the funding freeze came from Washington, something about budget disputes and audits. Diana leaned forward, skeptical. Audits? Or politics? Governments always find new excuses to spend or not spend. Alex nodded, keeping his tone measured. In this case, it's both. Congress passed the funding, but the Treasury's release stalled after disagreements over spending caps and new oversight rules. Some agencies are saying they need more transparency before releasing billions to states. Agnes shook her head. Meanwhile, families like mine are stuck in the middle. Outside, the city blurred through drizzle and tail lights, a living metaphor for the nation's moral fog. Diana crossed her arms. Why would states sue the same government that funds them? She asked. Alex explained, because this isn't about party, it's about timing. Every week of delay means clinics can't buy formula or renew contracts with local grocers. Mississippi, California, Georgia, New York, they're all on the same side for once. They're arguing the federal freeze violates existing law that guarantees continuous WIC funding. Agnes whispered, it's hard to feed continuity with uncertainty. Alex nodded, the line cutting deep. The government says it's ensuring accountability. The states say it's punishing mothers for bureaucratic caution. Diana exhaled through her nose, watching rain stripe the windows. So basically, politics with a grocery bill. They passed a line of billboards, car insurance, daycare centers, a smiling senator promising families first. Agnes gave a small laugh. Funny how they say families first until you need actual help. Diana adjusted her scarf. But isn't there abuse in these programs? Maybe they're just cleaning up fraud. Alex's voice stayed calm. That's the official claim, some improper vendor reimbursements, missing receipts, unverified participants. But those issues make up less than 1% of total WIC spending. The states say the freeze is like grounding every flight because one baggage handler missed a checklist. Agnes looked out the window. And the people paying the price don't even get to fly. The wipers tapped like punctuation marks to her truth. Alex shifted lanes, eyes steady. WIC isn't a luxury. It's basic survival during fragile years, pregnancy to age 5. It provides milk, formula, cereal, produce, eggs, beans, and support for breastfeeding. It's federally funded, yes, but locally managed. He glanced at Diana. Each state tailors it to its population. Georgia, for example, runs clinics through public health departments, and those clinics now face furloughs. Diana frowned. Furloughs? Yeah, Alex said. If funds don't move, staff can't be paid, clinics close, and participants lose benefits. Even if money's released later, rebuilding takes time. Agnes swallowed hard. So it's not just paperwork, it's people. Exactly, Alex said. And the longer Washington hesitates, the more expensive the recovery becomes. Diana tilted her head. Still, maybe it's time people learn to be self-reliant. My parents raised 5 kids without government help. Agnes smiled weakly. Groceries were cheaper then. Alex chuckled under his breath. And your parents probably weren't competing with post-pandemic inflation, housing shortages, and wage stagnation. Diana smiled ruefully. Fair point. He continued, self-reliance doesn't mean starvation. Even conservative governors are saying this freeze defies fiscal logic. Every dollar of WIC saves around $3 in future health costs. Mississippi's governor, a Republican, said, you don't balance the budget by starving babies. Diana blinked, surprised. He said that. Word for word, Alex said. And blue states echoed it right back. Agnes traced fog on the window with her finger. I just wish the people making these decisions had to sit where I sit, counting milk gallons instead of votes. Diana's expression softened. That's fair. Alex nodded. And ironically, that's why this lawsuit is historic. When both red and blue states file together, it's a signal. The system's broken beyond ideology. Agnes looked up. Do you think they'll win? Eventually, Alex said. But lawsuits move slower than hunger. He paused, then added quietly, some argue the federal freeze was a political message, pushing for wider spending cuts to offset national debt ceilings. Unfortunately, WIC became the leverage point. Diana sighed. Children as leverage. That's poetic in the worst way. The van turned onto Ponce de Leon, streetlights casting warm puddles across the windshield. Agnes shifted topics gently. When I first joined WIC, I didn't even know how to use half the foods they gave me. The clinic showed me recipes, gave me a breastfeeding counselor. It wasn't charity, it was education. Diana nodded. So it's like a guided nutrition program? Exactly, Alex said. It teaches how to build lasting habits, not dependency. That's the part politicians forget. Agnes smiled faintly. They helped me swap soda for fruit water. My twins think orange slices in their drinks make them rich. Diana laughed. That's a better kind of wealth. As they rolled past the Fox Theater, Alex's phone buzzed with another news alert. Federal court schedules emergency hearing on WIC funding dispute. The screen read. He read it aloud. Looks like they're pushing the Treasury for an injunction, temporary release of funds while the case proceeds. Agnes's eyes brightened. So the money might come through? If the judge agrees that the freeze harms public health, Alex said. States argue the government's delay violates the continuity of care clause Congress wrote decades ago. Diana frowned thoughtfully. Funny how bureaucracy breaks promises faster than it builds them. Diana asked, so which side is right? Alex shrugged. Both have a point. The feds want accountability, the states want action. But you can't audit hunger. You can only feed it or ignore it. Agnes laughed softly. You should be a senator. No thanks, Alex said. I prefer traffic to politics, it's more predictable. The van's hum filled the brief silence. Atlanta's skyline shimmered ahead, neon and rain bending together like watercolor. The air inside felt heavier, but honest. Each of them was learning something about policy, compassion, and the strange economy of empathy. Agnes pulled a small photo from her purse, her twins, grinning with cereal bowls like trophies. "They're growing fast," she said proudly. "They love carrots and yogurt now." "That's WIC." Diana studied the photo. "They look healthy." "Because we never skipped meals," Agnes said simply. "And because a nurse once told me, feeding your kids right is the first act of democracy." Alex smiled. "That nurse deserves a cabinet position." They all laughed, but quietly. They knew laughter doesn't fix systems, but it keeps spirits alive until the system catches up. "Imagine if the roles were reversed," Alex said. "What if the government delayed farmers' subsidies or defense contracts this way? There'd be outrage." Diana nodded slowly. "True. It's interesting what we call essential." "Exactly," Alex said. "Feeding children should never be negotiable. It's not liberal or conservative, it's biological." Agnes chuckled. Maybe biology is the last bipartisan language left. The car passed a bus stop where a woman held a sleeping child under her coat. They all fell silent, each wondering if that woman, too, was waiting for a government deposit that hadn't arrived. Diana spoke next, softer now. "I used to think programs like WIC were just excuses for laziness. But maybe I confused stability for dependence." Alex nodded. "That's a common mix-up. Real support doesn't remove responsibility, it allows people to practice it." Agnes added, "WIC taught me how to plan meals, track nutrients, and stretch food. I'm better at budgeting now than ever." Diana smiled faintly. "So it's a training ground, not a crutch." "Exactly," Alex said. "But training takes consistency, and that's what the funding freeze threatens." The conversation drifted toward hope. "If the states win the case," Agnes asked, "will they release the funds right away?" "Likely," Alex said. "The injunction would unfreeze billions owed to clinics. It might even set precedent, forcing federal agencies to keep health programs immune from shutdown politics." Diana raised a brow. "So this could change more than WIC." "Much more," Alex said. "It could redraw the lines between oversight and obstruction." Agnes smiled at her reflection in the window. Maybe the grown-ups are finally learning to share. They crossed through downtown, past the gold-domed Capitol building gleaming under wet clouds. "You know," Diana mused, "if both sides can unite over WIC, maybe there's hope for bigger issues too." Alex smiled wryly. "Don't get carried away now. This is America. We argue over everything, even the weather. But once in a while, hunger shuts everyone up long enough to act." Agnes laughed. "Maybe hunger is our truest common ground." The van rolled through the heartbeat of the city, ordinary people moving under extraordinary headlines. Agnes turned thoughtful. "I wish I could tell the people holding the purse strings what it feels like to wait for food funds while pretending everything's fine for your kids." Diana nodded. "That's the story the cameras miss." Alex agreed. "The human part gets lost behind spreadsheets. That's why these conversations matter, because policy doesn't feel real until you sit next to it." Outside, a billboard flashed, "Feeding Hope, Atlanta Food Drive." Agnes smiled faintly. "Hope shouldn't need a billboard," she said. They passed through Old Fourth Ward, where murals of civil rights heroes lined the walls. "Funny," Alex said, "how every generation fights a different kind of hunger, once for freedom, now for fairness." Diana nodded. "And every delay, every funding freeze, chips away at trust." "Exactly," Alex said. "When states sue the feds together, it's not rebellion, it's a reminder, bureaucracy exists to serve, not suffocate." Agnes whispered, "And families exist to survive, not beg." The words hung in the van, heavier than traffic, softer than prayer. As the ride neared its end, Agnes thanked Alex for explaining everything. "Most people just argue. You listened." "I drive for a living," he said, smiling. "Listening is half of the job." Diana added, "Maybe we should have more drivers in Congress." Alex laughed. "They'd at least know how to merge." The city opened up around them, wet asphalt, distant sirens, lights reflecting like hope bouncing off hard places. For a brief moment, even cynicism felt small. At the drop-off, Agnes gathered her things, looking lighter. "I'll call the clinic tomorrow," she said. "And maybe I'll email my state rep too." Diana gave her a nod. "Good. Keep them accountable." Alex smiled. That's how democracy works. Messy, slow, but eventually human. Agnes waved goodbye, disappearing into the glow of a grocery store window filled with apples, bananas, and possibilities. When the doors shut, Alex sat quietly for a moment, the rain whispering on the roof. He thought about how strange it was, blue and red states uniting, not for profit or power, but for milk and dignity. He whispered to himself, the measure of a nation isn't how fast it builds wealth, but how it feeds the smallest mouth. Then he turned the key, merged back into Atlanta's pulse, and drove on, still cynical, but with a little more faith that sometimes, even politics remembers its humanity. Quick reflection. After dropping off his passengers, Alex sat alone in the hum of his van, headlights painting gold on wet asphalt. He thought about Agnes's anxious gratitude, Diana's hardened logic, and the irony of a divided nation finally agreeing, only when the smallest citizens went hungry. He'd always seen government as a clumsy giant, but tonight he understood something else. Sometimes the fight isn't about money, it's about memory. Whether the government delays out of caution or politics, the result is the same: children waiting for milk while adults argue over decimals. "Funny," he muttered. "We can spend trillions on defense in a heartbeat, but feeding babies requires a hearing." The city breathed around him, sirens, laughter, thunder in the distance. Alex put the van in gear. His cynicism cracked just enough for empathy to slip through. Maybe the real deficit, he thought, isn't fiscal, it's moral. Moral lesson: the price of delay. The true test of a nation's character isn't measured by the size of its economy, but by how swiftly it acts when its most vulnerable go hungry. The WIC funding crisis reminds us that bureaucracy, when detached from compassion, can harm more than it helps. Intentions may be noble, calls for accountability, transparency, or fiscal discipline, but when those intentions slow the delivery of milk to a child or medicine to a mother, morality must outrun procedure. This story of Alex, Agnes, and Diana isn't just about three people in a car. It's about a country deciding what kind of neighbor it wants to be. When both red and blue states set aside politics to feed their youngest citizens, they reveal a powerful truth: human need should never wait for political approval. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments, like, share, and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up.